My name is Jack Stuart. I'm a business development director at Tektelic, and we're based in Calgary, in Canada. As most of you know, Tektelic is a global provider of IoT infrastructure and solutions. We're very proud to be the leader when it comes to carrier-grade products designed for the highest performance, availability, and reliability for any deployment environment, including some very hazardous areas, which is, of course, the theme of this webinar today. And as we build our IoT portfolio, we do so with the primary goal of empowering our customers and our partners to achieve the lowest total cost of ownership when deploying and managing their networks. And we'll talk a lot about that today during the webinar. So now to kick things off, I'd like to provide just sort of a little bit of an overview of the IoT technology. Um, the IoT technology that Tektelic and really the ecosystem has chosen as the leader when it comes to high-value LPWAN deployments is LoRaWAN. And today there are over 16 billion IoT devices deployed globally, and this number is actually projected to double in the next 5 years. And while many of these 16 billion devices are consumer-focused, BLE, Wi-Fi types of devices, the adoption and the deployment of low power wide area network technologies, LPWAN technologies, is accelerating. And it's really transforming the way that enterprise and industrial IoT applications are operated. LoRaWAN, specifically, the LoRaWAN technology has really emerged as one of the most widely adopted and certainly the most successful LPWAN technologies, thanks to its long-range capabilities and ultra-low power consumption, which is made possible due to some, very efficient and very low data rates. Right in the name LORA, LoRa, it stands for long range. It's not uncommon for a LoRaWAN network to cover tens of kilometers in a rural setting or 2 to 3 kilometers in sort of dense urban areas, and also be able to support very deep indoor penetration for indoor use cases as well. This is comparable and sometimes even exceeds the coverage of a traditional cellular network. As I mentioned a minute ago, LoRaWAN is also designed to be extremely power efficient with a large ecosystem of battery-operated wireless devices that can operate for 5 years, 10 years, even more, sometimes 15, 20 years in the case of some very low data devices, things like water meters that may not be transmitting quite as often. LoRaWAN is also a very cost-effective technology. So the long-range coverage capabilities and the power efficiency really paves the way for low-cost gateways and devices to be available in the market. But then when you also consider that LoRaWAN provides connectivity in the unlicensed or free spectrum, it guarantees LoRaWAN success among the competing LPWAN technologies. And LoRaWAN networks are built to be very high capacity, meaning that a single LoRaWAN gateway can simultaneously send and receive data from thousands or even tens of thousands of devices, supporting millions of messages per day. And of course, LoRaWAN has been adopted as a global standard, which is backed by the LoRa Alliance, with deployments today in over 170 countries globally, and a growing ecosystem of hardware vendors, solution providers, integrators, and platform vendors like all of us who are on the call or on the webinar here today. Okay, so we can jump to the next slide, Kareem. So now I'd like to take just a quick look of the high-level architecture of a common LoRaWAN network. Today we'll spend a little bit of time during this webinar focusing on each of the components of a LoRaWAN network, but I'll just start with the quick high-level overview. So in any LoRaWAN network, you have your devices or your sensors, including, of course, the excellent products that are developed by Aircom, which Luke will introduce you to in a few minutes here. And those transmit data over LoRaWAN, potentially very, very long distances, as I had mentioned, to a LoRaWAN gateway. My colleague Frank will talk to you more in this presentation about the role of the gateway in the LoRaWAN network, but also the key differentiators and what you should sort of look out for when you're choosing a LoRaWAN gateway. The gateway itself simply just acts as a packet forwarder. It forwards the message onto a LoRaWAN network server. And most commonly, this is done through a cellular connection or an Ethernet connection. But we are starting to see more and more use cases in the ecosystem for satellite backhaul connections as well, which is very interesting. After the data leaves the gateway and is backhauled on, it hits the network server, which is really the brain of the LoRaWAN network, as it controls the network, and it also decides which packets are from a device in its network, and then makes the decision to accept or reject those packets, and then, of course, decrypt the packet if it's accepting that packet into the network. This is where all the security is housed for your network. This is also where you can make configurations for your devices and your gateways. So let's just say, for example, you had a device that was deployed and was transmitting data into the network every 15 minutes, but you wanted to change this reporting threshold to be, say, every 5 minutes, or even maybe based on some sort of event. These configurations can be managed within the network server. And then finally, of course, a network is really only valuable if you can visualize the data that's being collected and make decisions with it. And so that's where the application piece comes into play. Now today, Tektelic, we proudly provide end-to-end solutions. So we have our own very large portfolio of devices. We have the largest and most comprehensive portfolio of gateways in the LoRaWAN ecosystem. We have a network server. We have applications as well. But we also work very, very hard to ensure that this is an open architecture, an open ecosystem, meaning that each piece can be provided by a different partner and integrated to provide a very specific high value solution. So that's why we're so proud to collaborate with companies like Aircom to work together to provide practical, targeted solutions that solve real problems in the industry. All right, so we can jump to the next one. Now, before I pass it over to Luke to talk about the devices, I just want to reinforce that a lot of the key differentiators, or sort of the key kind of value of LoRaWAN that I just mentioned, really lend itself very well to being the ideal technology for IoT deployments in hazardous areas. The long-range capabilities allow users to deploy more devices and collect more data without or with less infrastructure required. It also supports, models where you have hazardous rated devices deployed on site, transmitting, potentially very long distances to gateways that are off-site, which is a very common architecture for hazardous locations. However, as you'll learn throughout this webinar, there are also more and more products available in the market that can be deployed directly on site in these hazardous areas, which is a great sort of evolution of the LoRaWAN ecosystem. The wireless battery-operated nature of LoRaWAN greatly simplifies deployment. And of course, the low power benefit lends itself greatly to reducing maintenance required to manage the network, because you don't have to worry about running power to all of your devices. You don't have to continuously visit sites to replace batteries or change out devices, anything like that. Going to a site to, or replace a battery or to swap out a device can be very, very, very expensive. And that's especially the case when you're dealing with hazardous sites. So it's very important, and it's a very big benefit of LoRaWAN that you can, deploy devices and just let them sit there and do their thing. Not only that, LoRaWAN also allows for full remote management of your gateways and devices, which is a big reason why the LoRaWAN technology is ideal in helping users achieve the lowest total cost of ownership to manage their networks. And then finally, I've said it a few times, but the large and growing ecosystem of industrial LoRaWAN solutions is really outstanding, as it's becoming more and more, there are becoming more and more targeted solutions available to address the most common industrial challenges across many different verticals.